The big one, because there's been quite a lot of news that have come out around the gaming world over the last couple of weeks, definitely since Christmas and so on. So I'm really excited to be able to bring you guys this and have this discussion with both of you two as well. We are joined as usual by Lychee and by Roost. So say hello, guys.
Hello.
And it's going to be great fun. I'm really looking forward to this one because there has been some really great and interesting stuff. First of all, I think I wanted to discuss something that you put in our chat, Lychee, actually, was that we had some information that Xbox exclusives may be a huge thing this year, and we've not actually had any information. They're kind of keeping it close to their chest, I believe is what
so just to preface, I didn't read the article. I literally just glanced at it.
That's fine. I don't think I did, to be fair. What's interesting about that though is there seems to be some sort of inside knowledge that the Xbox exclusives are going to be huge this year, and I'm really interested to see on how that kind of goes and what they're going to be doing with that. Are they trying to get back on that exclusivity board and try to knock PlayStation off of its pretty high mantle at the moment? I think that's definitely one to consider for this year. And with everything kind of going on across the world as well, there's been nothing but delays across all media outlets for everything, whether that's TV show, movies, games. It's
delays. The Harry Potter game just got delayed as well.
Yes, it did. Back to 2022.
There's just so many delays. Sad, but it's understandable at the same time. I think anybody who wasn't expecting a shit ton load of delays with the situation around the world, I think pretty much, if you were expecting game development studios to be able to just shift to being pretty much entirely work from home and everything be fine, then being naive. I think this work from home thing is working a lot better.
Sorry, can you run that backwards a little bit? I just got hosted by Owen.
The host.
And I forgot to mute those. Owen, thank you so much for the host, brother. Much appreciated. Right, let me try and mute these. Carry on. And go again.
But basically I'm just saying that obviously a lot of game development studios have got this big shift to work from home, and in the long run I think that could end up being very beneficial to the industry. I found a lot of particularly smaller ones, but even some of the bigger ones are finding that the work ethic and the way that work is being done by developers who are working from home is better. But with the initial shift, there are a lot of logistics that have to be sorted out. There are a lot of things that are coming to light for companies and developers that they didn't necessarily expect, didn't realize they needed to account for and plan for. And so the first year of this switch is where all of the problems are going to be, is where all the delays are going to come in, because although they've got all of their development time, a lot of their development time is being taken up by the logistics work of shifting everyone to working from home, making sure that everybody who is working from home has the equipment. Don't get me wrong, I'd say probably about 95% of developers probably have their own rig at home that is perfectly capable, but there may be those few that may be a game developer who works in the office, but they may not. They may be a console gamer or a TV enthusiast. They may not have a big powerful computer because they never needed one at home. And even those who do, there's a lot of software that is required, particularly proprietary software. This is where things come in tricky, because obviously you've got people who are running Unreal Engine, and that's perfectly fine. Anyone can get Unreal Engine at home, and but there's still some work to that with that. But let's look at someone like Bethesda, who run with their continuously updating version of the creation engine. That's not readily accessible. I can't go and download that engine right now. So there's a lot of logistics to make sure that every employee has this work environment at home, and they've got to work out what the best way to do this. Is this going to be to give them laptops with all of the stuff pre-installed, or do they want to set up some download links? But then they've also got to be careful, because they don't really want their engine getting out there. There's a lot of proprietary work. There's a lot of internal work that they do on these engines that are not public for a reason. So a lot of the time that is taking for companies to do that is eating into time that would have been put on these games, and so these games are being delayed. But that doesn't reflect work from home being bad. Work from home could be great, but a lot of them have been delayed because of all of these changes with the shift to work from home. But once all of these kinks are ironed out, um,
Hey, stop
potentially
kink
we
shaming.
could see but we could potentially see a much higher quality, a better workflow. It's all company by company. Some companies may prefer it, some companies may not, but the initial change is going to eat into development time, and thus last year, this year, maybe even next year at a push, we may be seeing constant delays with a lot of companies because of the shift.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think it's definitely really important to consider the fact that this is not just something that's happening to the gaming industry. This is happening across the entire all industries. Now,
Everywhere.
I work primarily in the financial industry, and I can guarantee to you that every single country's financial institution is being absolutely ruined by this.
Oh yes.
And it's not just gaming. And the good thing about gaming is, you're right, there are workarounds. There's a good way to develop, continue gaming development, as you've already given examples for. And you're right, this is going to build massive resilience as well. And I think in terms of productivity overall, there's going to be a boost of that, an improvement of that once everything's all in place, because everybody here who has worked has pretty much sat there and has said at some point, I don't feel well, or I feel really shit, so I'm probably going to call in sick. What has actually been found out, especially across the financial industry, is that more and more people are working from home when they would call in sick. So in terms of overall productivity, there's actually a boost, and there's less what would be called shrinkage being sickness,
because they're
holidays, stuff
comfortable
like that.
enough to sort of,
Exactly.
whether it was calling in sick because they were very ill, a little bit ill, or just having an off day. There's a lot more comfortability of, I don't mind. I'll crack the laptop out. I'll
Yeah.
do my work. I can get through. Cup of tea will make me feel better. A cup of coffee. A lot of people think like that. Whereas it's the commute to work, the spending time in an uncomfortable environment. I mean, you can be very comfortable in your workplace, but nothing will quite be as comfortable as your home. And so, yeah, a lot of people are a lot more willing to just get the job done and not feel like, oh, I could really do with just not working today for
Yeah,
this
I think
such
I,
and
I think
such reason.
as well is, if you are feeling sicky, the last thing you want to do is be stuck in a car or whatever where you can't just it's awkward, isn't it, having to pull over if you genuinely need to throw up.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you're sat at home, you can just go do your business, do what you got to do, and then get back to it.
Yeah. And I think a lot more businesses have seen that has massively improved. I mean, my business, I'm not going to go into any details or information or anything like that, but we've seen that as a massive improvement, and that's definitely something to take away from this. There are other factors that, of course, counteract this, internet being an issue. If you've got problems with your ISP, you're essentially not able to work, and that can cause a massive issue. And if companies like Bethesda are not willing to send out their their laptops and their everything, basically, they don't want to send it out to their employees, then they can just remote into the actual computers at work. The problem with that is you need to have a stable connection to be able to continue working on this kind of environment. And if somebody's not got great internet, whether that be the ISP they chose, the area they live in, or anything along those lines, that can halt that, or anything along those lines. But it's definitely something that we need to consider. That you're completely right, Ruth. Different ways of working. That's not different to the gaming industry whatsoever, and they have definitely been impacted for it. I think what is important is that there have been certain games of 2020 that have come out and have been, let's say, slaughtered by the press. Because of how unfinished they were, and how boring some other games were, and how repetitive they were. I think a lot of companies now in the gaming industry are taking a step backwards and saying, look, we need to make sure that this is ready. Games are not what they used to be 10 years ago. We've seen a lot of people across
development
the
times
internet
have increased
massively.
so much, and some companies aren't Like, well, I don't know. Mainly publishers
Yeah.
tend to be the culprit here, but a lot of publishers aren't. Publishers, I should say, sorry, don't seem too happy with development times increasing because that doesn't seem like as much profit to them. But
Yeah.
it's at the same time, it's like, well, with the scale of games increasing, this is where you need to be willing to now. There's a lot of people out there that shoot Bethesda, Bethesda bad guys, um, but that's something that they definitely do right.
Yes.
From they're not the only ones. You could say the same about From Software with their Elden Ring news and things like that as well. But they are very much
Straight away for you. Elden Ring, where is it?
yeah. But they're very much, they keep things close to their chest. They give us the bits of information that we need. They are willing to give a game the time that it requires. The reason they can get away with that is because they don't give us massively in advance release date and then
Yes.
realize they can't face it. At the end of the day, both Starfield and Elden Ring, from two completely different companies, have both had exactly the same thing. We had tiny little reveals. It was implied we'd be seeing some more stuff by now, and then we've had absolutely nothing. And the reason for that, and you'd be a fool if you don't realize this, is they have been delayed. But the difference is they've been silently delayed because we were never given a date. We were never told that we'd find out more information about these games by 2021. So when the time rolled around where they might have been were planning to show their next trailer or give us more information, and they went, well, actually the game's not where it needs to be. We need to give it more time. They've been able to just say, well, push back the second announcement,
Yeah.
and no one will be the wiser. No one has any idea how many times Elden Ring or Starfield could potentially have been delayed. Maybe they haven't been delayed at all, and maybe they planned for us to know this well in advance. I doubt it. Maybe they've only been delayed once. We'll get news soon. Maybe they've had multiple delays. But because we don't know, we can't be mad.
Yeah.
We're just
It could
waiting.
very well be just they don't have an end date. They have,
Yeah.
a roadmap with plans with specific dates, but that's their,
Yeah.
company
These
confidential.
are both studios that if a game doesn't feel ready to them,
Yeah,
they
won't do
will
it.
wait. They will wait, and that is the reason that they don't give us information. We we haven't been told anything about Elden Ring because they'll tell us when they feel the game is almost ready. Then they'll give us the trailers. Then they'll give us the announcements. Then they'll give us the dates, and then it's very unlikely we'll see a delay after that. Maybe one if something catastrophic comes up, but they won't give us a date well before they can see the
Yes.
end goal. If the end goal isn't in sight, they're not going to give us a date because they have no idea if they can reach it. And these are two studios that will abide by that rule of the game is ready when it's ready. If we've been slightly too ambitious, guess we're going to have to work on it a bit longer.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And Owen's put in here, because we were referring to Cyberpunk as well during this.
Yeah.
Gave it a solid 8 out of 10. I think I think we'd all give the similar score here, but I think we've also all mostly played it on PC, and we've had nothing but positivity for it. But sometimes there is acknowledgement here that the versions that were sold were not great. Anything what's considered now old gen for console, that's an issue, and that is a huge issue. And I think it's definitely important to talk about Cyberpunk itself and the apology video that CD Projekt Red released the other day, with its kind of not very informative roadmap to improve things.
Yeah.
The good thing is that even with the short amount of time from release 2 months ago to now, the game is 10 times more stable and 10 times better than what it was back in November, thanks to some small updates. And I think a game like that, and any ambitious games like that going forward, would really, really benefit from becoming an early access title. in my
Yeah.
personal opinion, because you don't always find these massive bugs and these massive issues until a major player base picks up the game. And I know that there was a lot there that the company would have left in and knew that there were issues left, right, and center, but there are just some things you'll never ever find out until you've got, hundreds of thousands of people playing it. And
Yeah, like
that's the thing.
CD Projekt Red are the perfect example of the ones who did it the other way around and how catastrophic that was. They went for a project that was far too ambitious for what they wanted. There are so many features that were cut from the game because they realized they couldn't do them in time. They'd also given us dates well in advance, which meant every single delay that we received was like salt in the wound. Every time every time they delayed the game, everybody was just like, "Oh, again? Really? Come
Yeah.
on!" And then they'd put an announcement, and we'd find out that this feature has been cut and that feature has been cut. Like, the subway system was removed from the game, and everyone was just like, "Oh, okay, so that was quite a big part of the game that's now gone." And this whole class system idea that they had and they'd shown years ago, where there was about I think there was about 15 different classes, and Street Kid, Nomad, and Corpo, they were in that list. But then about 2 years after that list, we suddenly get shown that we're getting Street Kid, Corpo, and everything just sort of felt like, oh, you're just dumbing down the game. You're dumbing down the game. And what we have isn't bad, but in comparison to what they promised, it is, which is where secrecy can be more beneficial. There's so many features and things in game development that get cut so early on. There are so many things. Again, going back to From Software, for example, people quite well into Dark Souls 3's life cycle discovered hints and assets to day-night cycles and rituals and things that were going to be able to change the skybox of the world, because it would alter how Dark Souls 3's world was affected, and all these different things. And these came out years later, and everyone just sort of went, "Oh, they would have been cool." We had no idea these things had been cut from the game, and so we were happy with what we got. There are now theories that these features have been carried over into Elden Ring. Not that we know, 'cause we don't know anything about it. But when CD Projekt Red just kept giving us all of these ambitions and ideas that weren't in place yet, they hyped us up for things that we wanted and thought, "Oh, yeah, that's really cool. We really want that." And then when they removed them and then delayed the game and then removed more stuff and delayed the game and removed more features and delayed the game again and again and again, eventually the game comes out and it's a great game, but you kind of just sit there going, "Yeah, but there's a lot of shit you didn't give us." Like there's a lot of bugs that are in this release build that should be ironed out. The game needed more time and the game needed less ambition, and it got neither. And there's the problem with being so transparent. Transparency is good on a marketing point, but not when it comes to features and development. Because
Well, you say good for a marketing point. It may be good for marketing early, but let's face it, marketing after release has not been on their side really. They've got a lot of crap for a lot of stuff that you're actually explaining here, and I think a lot of people, especially kind of towards Reddit, YouTube, anybody that's made content on this, have pretty much said the same things. There were features that were promised that were not in the final product, and no, I completely agree with you. There's some things that really you need to just keep in-house. Another perfect example, after you've explained Elden Ring, is Star Citizen through and through. There have been so many things that have been promised that would be here now, 8 years on, that are not here now, and a lot of the community is quite bitter about that. So you're right, transparency is fantastic within scope and scale. Too much transparency can be the downfall of a released game.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think CD Projekt Red fell into this. Now, of course, CD Projekt Red, being CD Projekt Red, are not going to be just dropping it from here, and they've already said that, and they've already apologized, and they've already, gone forward and said what they're doing to rectify the issue. But people need to remember that The Witcher 3 was exactly the same.
Oh yeah. People like to forget. People look at Witcher 3 like it was this holy grail of launches and things like that, and it wasn't.
I think
First few months of The Witcher 3 was rough.
I think it wasn't the game it was now for a good year or two. It took them a long time to really get it to where it needed to be. And
yeah, Witcher 3 had quite a rough launch as well, but over time, because the game itself was proved to be so good, people forget about that. And I feel like that's going to be the same with Cyberpunk. I feel like in 5-6 years' time, we won't be looking back at Cyberpunk like, oh, what a terrible game that was. We're going to be looking back at it as like, oh yeah, Cyberpunk is a brilliant game. And then people might point out, yeah, remember its launch though? Oh yeah, that was pretty rough. Thank God it's better now.
Battlefield 4's launch.
Yeah, it's a common thing. Battlefield 4's launch was, I believe it was like in the media, it was dubbed like the worst gaming launch in history or something. Like it got some really rough press, and Battlefield 4 is fantastic.
It's going to be the Fight Club of video games, I think, for Cyberpunk. Anybody who doesn't know that reference, Fight Club is one of my favorite films of all time. When that came out in cinema, it was not very well received because of some of the situations that happened towards the end of the film. I won't ruin it for you. So it tanked pretty hard in the press and in the box office. It then came on to make probably like 5 times more than it cost, and has become one of the greatest films of all time.
Yeah, it's a massive classic now, but it had a rough launch.
Yeah, it did not open well. The opening weekend was not great, and it got completely tanked in the press really badly. I think for legitimate reasons at the time, but it didn't release and open very well. But that's why I'm kind of comparing it, because I believe Cyberpunk in a couple of years' time is going to be one of the greatest games that we have ever picked up, especially when they manage to, fingers crossed, touch wood, sort out multiplayer.
Yep.
We are going to be waiting for that. I reckon we're going to be waiting over a year for that at this stage, though. They've got a lot to focus on single player wise, but it will be a fantastic game to a point where people will look back on it and say, yeah, it was rough when it started, but it was worth the journey to where it is now.
It'll be one of those games where people will be talking about it being one of the best games of the decade, but then at the same time basically saying, but ignore its first 2 years.
Yeah.
It'll be us idiots in 10 years.
Back in my day.
Games were released like this to show them Assassin's Creed Unity, Battlefield 4. Back in my day, we didn't even get the right textures in a game.
It's not a world I want to live in. Anyway, so I think we move on to what was really quite a surprise announcement that came out last week. And that was that we've always known that Star Wars games have been exclusive to EA and have pretty much been that way since LucasArts kind of fell through.
Yeah, they had a 10-year contract.
And that is not being renewed.
No, it is.
Very, very soon. I believe it's still currently in place for another year on game releases.
It's closer to 2 years.
2 years.
The thing to look at is the reason it's being announced this way now is because it's not being renewed in 2 years' time. Companies are being given the right to start development on projects because of the fact that development on these projects will take longer than 2 years.
Yep.
So it's one of those things where a couple of studios have announced that they're being given rights to work on through LucasArts Games, which is going to be like the new sort of owner of the Star Wars rights, and are going to be able to sub out contracts to many different developers. They basically said that these companies are being given the rights to start their work on games because by the time the games are ready to release, EA will no longer have their contract.
Yeah, that's something I was going to definitely mention as well. This is rights to release, not to create. So that is a fantastic announcement. And what's really interesting is that they've gone with Ubisoft for this. So, if from my perspective, you don't move from EA to Ubisoft because from their marketing point of view, they're not that great companies to go ahead with, but that's my personal opinion. What I think is interesting is the team that are dedicated to do this are the team that created the Division games, and
yeah, it's massive entertainment, isn't it?
Yeah, and the game is being done on the SnowDrop engine, so I'm really interested to see what kind of concept they come up with on that front, and how they use the SnowDrop engine to bring the game to life. I think
it'll be good because the Division, I mean, I don't think anybody can argue that the Division's got a bad engine.
No, it doesn't.
The SnowDrop engine it's got beautiful visuals, and so really interesting to see what they can do with that engine, how they can really show off this engine in more ways than just the Division.
Yeah, I think this is definitely one to keep on everybody's radar. It's going to be really interesting, and I'm curious to see exactly what they do with it. I think there's speculation around that you'll end up being a bounty hunter instead of maybe a Jedi.
I want them to bring a bounty hunter game out, mainly because of the cancelled project. Was it Agent 13 or something, or 133?
No, you're thinking of Star Wars something 1313.
That's the one, yeah. Star Wars something 1313. That project looked so good from the small amount of gameplay we had seen, and then the project just disappeared, and we later found out it's because EA canned it. And that was so gutting because that was more of a bounty hunter sort of experience in the Star Wars universe, and some of the gameplay elements that we saw in that early development video was just looked so good. I saw that video and I was like, oh my god, I need this, and then it just disappeared.
I think,
and we were told we would never get it, and that just sucked.
One important thing, I think, for all fans of the Star Wars universe is that if the last decade has proven anything, you do not need Jedis to release a good Star Wars piece of content at all, whether that be a movie or game or anything. You do not need Jedi or Sith to make it amazing. And whilst, they're always going to be main factors in the Star Wars universe, that's just always going to be a thing. Playing a game where you're not playing as a monk that can kick the living shit out of everything is going to be a bit of a breath of fresh air. I think that's what still keeps a lot of people playing Star Wars: The Old Republic. The online MMO is that you don't have to just be a Jedi. You can be a bounty hunter, or you can do all of these different things. And I think trying to focus away from that side of it for a little while could really be positive. I mean, take Rogue One, for example. A lot of fans, it's divided, very divided, consider Rogue One to be one of the best Star Wars films that was ever released, and there wasn't even a speck of a Jedi in any way, shape, or form during that film. And it's Vader was in it for the last couple of minutes, which, don't get me wrong, that was fucking awesome. But yeah, if they focus it a lot more on a pack of bounty hunters in a single player story driven experience, I wouldn't say no.
With the success of the Mandalorian series as well, they'd be fools not to capitalize on that.
They really, really would. And Ubisoft is a very, very interesting choice. I would love to see what their plan is. I want to see it now, but of course, not going to happen.
Yeah, it's gonna be a few years. The interesting thing is I'm wondering whether Ubisoft are going to be given an exclusivity contract like EA. I don't think they are.
I doubt it.
I think the rights are going to be held by LucasArts,
Yeah.
and it's going to be like it was before EA got the exclusivity, where many different publishers and developers could approach LucasArts for a right. The same way, for example, that Larian Studios did
Yes.
Wizards of the Coast to get the D&D rights. You know, they were able to go to Wizards of the Coast and say, look, we want to make a D&D game. And originally they were turned down. That's when they went and made Original Sin 2. And then after that, they were like, okay, yeah, no, you've proven your point, and they gave them the rights. And I think it's going to be a lot like that. Companies can approach LucasArts, say that they would like to make, pitch their Star Wars game idea, and if LucasArts like it, then they will be granted the right to make that Star Wars game. And so we could see a lot more variety, because EA, in their 8 out of the 10 years that they've had their contract, have released, I believe, 3 Star Wars games. We used to get Star Wars games all the time, and then because EA wanted exclusivity, and EA is just one publisher, we got 3 games. All of a sudden, we just got Star Wars drought, basically.
If anybody thinks that exclusivity is good in the gaming industry, please leave. Exclusivity
You're not welcome.
is not good for this exact reason. That it limits creativity, and it's just. And
if EA wanted to make their games, then there's nothing wrong with that. We could have had the Battlefront 2 by DICE, and the new Star Wars one. I can't remember the name of it. The
Fallen Order.
Fallen Order, that one. I believe they're
fantastic.
They're like the 3. But we could have got those games from EA. They would have been. I mean, come on. It's EA. They're big enough that they could have been able to say, we want to make this game with this developer. They'd have been given the license. So all the exclusivity deal did was meant that we weren't able to get other games by other developers. We weren't able to get some strategy Star Wars game, or hell, maybe even a new pod racer game or something like that. There's plenty of...
No. We're not pod racing. This is not pod racing.
You don't want a modern developed pod racing game.
No.
I do. I want Star Wars Mario Kart, and simmer down if you don't want that.
This is going to get heated, so we'll move on quickly.
This is going to get heated.
Either way, what we've got to remember as well, that it's not just keeping those rights themselves. The problem is if they release a bad game, then there's an issue. And what happened with Battlefront 2?
Spicy!
Battlefront 2 did not land in the first year.
No, it did not.
It did not land in any way, shape, or form. I know, let's have everything behind a paywall that actually benefits people who put money into the game. Well done, EA! You FIFA'd it.
They did. They FIFA'd a shooter, and it's just like, oh
it
god,
did not land well at all, which it shouldn't have. And do you know what? That was
it landed about as well as Anakin when he tried to jump up at Obi.
Yeah, the community on that one had the high ground.
It was left crawling with no more limbs left,
screaming, "I hate you."
Yeah, with the most murderous look I have ever seen in any depiction of anything ever. Nothing will ever top that look in his eyes when he screams, "I hate you."
Excellent.
And that was that's how it landed.
That was Battlefront 2. Battlefront 2 now is a fantastic game. It's great now.
What we were talking about earlier. Games can release bad and get better.
I think one of the biggest problems that the last decade has unfortunately given to us is that we're learning a lot of lessons, which is fantastic, but we're learning them off the back of mistakes, or at least the industry's learning them off the back of mistakes, and developers are learning them off the back of mistakes as well. And EA is usually one of the teams that are at the front of all that. With the whole gambling mechanics or surprise mechanics. Yeah, because it's definitely not gambling in any way, shape or form.
They're not gambling. They're surprise mechanics. Oh,
Bombs.
what a terrible thing to say.
Stuff like that are huge mistakes that are defining the industry, because everybody's got to realize that the gaming industry is barely 30 years old. Like, it's still very much in its infancy stage, and because the technology is flying forward at 110 miles an hour, no one can ever kind of like settle themselves and dig their feet into the ground, because something new quickly kind of comes along. And the problem with that is companies are making so many mistakes that it's good that they're making the mistakes, because we're now moving into a situation where these mistakes are not getting repeated because the press have been shit hot on it. Cyberpunk, EA's games, all of them, especially FIFA. And it's becoming more of a focus on making sure that it's consumer friendly. So you've got, at the moment, the devil of the situation, which is EA, and then what seems to be the hero of the situation, which is, sorry, Sony fanboys, Microsoft. It's kind of in that realm at the moment, and I think
it's mental to say that, because if you go back if you go back 5 years,
5 years ago.
you go back 5 years and you'd be saying Microsoft were worse than EA.
Yeah,
and now you're using Microsoft as the these are the polar opposites to EA. It's wild how a company can change with different management.
It really is, and I'm excited for the next couple of years. Now, speaking of Microsoft, and of course Bethesda. Sorry, Leechy, you're still hanging out there, aren't you?
Yeah.
There you go.
Any comments at all?
No.
No. Cool. So
Star Wars isn't really my thing, so
yeah. Adam just popped up in the chat. Is Ash even in this one?
Oh, there he is.
There he is. And that concludes the Leechy segment of this episode.
Yeah, no, not really. So anyway, so Microsoft, we're going to be talking about Microsoft and Bethesda this time, because it's been announced that an Indiana Jones game is coming out, and it's going to be developed by Bethesda, who are now under the Microsoft Studio umbrella, which is going to be very interesting. And this poses a lot of questions.
So good, but it could be so bad.
I think I'm the only person across the internet who is concerned. And
I'm concerned in the sense of this could go down very badly, or it could go down very well.
I think the problem that they've got is that they're going to be pulling on inspiration from two very, great game franchises, and that being Tomb Raider and Uncharted. And I feel like it's just going to end up feeling like an Uncharted clone, but for Microsoft. They've got to really nail this one down and try to make it as unique as possible for it to, in my opinion, stand a chance.
It could do, though, because if you take Uncharted, if you take the reception of Uncharted when that was first being announced, the original reaction to Uncharted was just, so it's just a
Tomb
male
Raider.
Lara Croft.
Yeah.
It's just Tomb Raider with Nathan Drake instead of Lara Croft. And then people played the game and went, actually, this game's great. And it was executed very well. And the Uncharted games have done nothing but grow in popularity. And so it has the potential to do that. There is
one very distinct difference between them, though. And that is Uncharted wasn't something that was, known about beforehand. It's not had anything else to kind of back it up in its lore. The problem with Indiana Jones is it's such a beloved franchise that
it's going to be
one mistake
well under the microscope.
Yeah, one mistake could really ruin its reputation and ruin Bethesda's attempt at bringing Indiana Jones to life in 2020, or the decade of 2020 onwards. And that's why I'm concerned. And I don't like to be negative about games and stuff like that. But one, we need to have more info, which will come when it comes. It's Bethesda, so we probably won't see it now until 2027, 2028. We won't get any gameplay until probably 6 months before it's released. And we'll get snippets of information 2 days before it comes out, something along those lines. And I think, I am definitely concerned because Indiana Jones is a huge franchise, and you're completely right, Roost. It will be massively under the microscope.
I think the thing is, there's very few studios that I can honestly say have a shot. Bethesda is one of them. Like, it could go catastrophic, but the size and the scope of what Bethesda do, they come out buggy. People like to laugh at the Elder Scrolls games because they have little bugs and people make jokes about them. Oh, but the community will fix it. But there's not a lot of studios that do things quite as big as Bethesda do.
Yeah.
And I feel like if it's going to be done, it needs a studio that is that big and that ambitious.
Yes.
And that sort of confident that they can just bust into a room, drop a bag that sends Indiana Jones, and go, "There's your game. Bye."
I'm really interested to see how they do it. If they look at it from an open world perspective and make it, kind of RPG-esque, I think they could do a really good job.
Yeah.
But if they do it in the same vein as Tomb Raider and of Uncharted, it could leave a bit of taste in people's mouths.
Have some exceptional world building.
Yeah.
I reiterate, something Bethesda can do.
Very true.
But there would need to be a lot of focus on the world and the experience on top of the gameplay. Like, don't get me wrong, the gameplay's got to be good, but at the end of the day, can you honestly say that Skyrim's gameplay was revolutionary and like the best combat you've ever played?
No.
Of course not. Skyrim's combat is barely sufficient, but the world is fantastic.
Yeah.
And the same goes for pretty much all of the Elder Scrolls games. And I feel like this is where I think Bethesda might be the right studio for it, because as long as the gameplay is sufficient enough that you could compare it to an Uncharted or a Tomb Raider game, but they really pour everything, all of their effort and into the detail of the world, that is where it can succeed.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that front. We can only wait and see. I mean, This is a very, very early announcement, and there are plenty of games that need to be focused on before Indiana Jones, for sure. That being, Starfield, which is a couple of years away now, and the Elder Scrolls, which we're hoping will be as early as 2026, but we'll see about that.
Starfield has definitely been quietly delayed in the background a couple of times, which means the Elder Scrolls 6 has also been delayed because real development won't start on that until Starfield's about to release. So it's a knock-on effect. If Starfield has been delayed, then so it's basically every other project after.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm interested to see on if their methodology changes in the way that they work now that they're under the Microsoft banner. I don't think it will, but especially with Indiana Jones being such a big IP, I'm wondering if that's going to have an impact on the way that Bethesda works. I think Bethesda were hiring quite a lot. I think that was within the news at some point within the last few weeks.
They've been hiring a lot over the past two years.
So
there's been a lot of hiring. A lot of the speculation was the hiring was for Starfield and for Elder Scrolls, and maybe it was, but then maybe it was also because of the fact that they wanted this other project to be done. But over the past 2 years, they've been hiring practically a studio's worth of positions.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. That's going to be interesting. Are they hiring that many people to start Elder Scrolls earlier in this kind of in the Bethesda cycle, or are they hiring a lot of people now to start working separate projects in tandem? We don't know what's going on over there, and of course, no matter what Microsoft said, there was always going to be a change in the way Bethesda handles their kind of workloads, and we've just got to see if that's going to be for the better.
In an ideal world, Microsoft and Bethesda's connection, Microsoft will be nothing but a resource. in an ideal world, and what we hope for, and what they've implied is how it's going, but you don't really know what the behind the scenes businesses is.
Okay.
But they have implied that this is the case, that Bethesda is working as Bethesda has always worked, and Microsoft is just this big resource for Bethesda to pull on for whatever they need. And yeah, I think this is probably why we're seeing these bigger projects. I mean, it's all Todd when you really think about it. All these projects that are being announced and coming out, it's because they're ambitions of Todd, and he's built up such a recognition beneath Bethesda. I mean, he was basically their savior. They were about to go under when he really brought in the reins and saved them from destruction.
Yeah.
So he's really built himself up a reputation to the point where Bethesda's just say like, yeah, sure, you want to do something, let's do it. And that's what Starfield is. Starfield was originally a game in development under the name of 10th Planet about 10 years ago, which was Todd's idea. The project was eventually abandoned because it was deemed far too ambitious for the time period. It couldn't be made. The game that he wanted couldn't be made, so they binned the project. And there's a lot of evidence to show that Starfield is Todd's second attempt at his sci-fi love child. And again, they've mentioned that Indiana Jones. This heavily comes from Todd. He's a massive Indiana Jones fan. In fact, in one of the recent interviews, people were saying that they think he was hinting at it because he had some Indiana Jones statues and memorabilia on the shelf behind him. And they've actually come out and said, actually, that wasn't meant to be a hint. Todd's just a huge Indiana Jones fan, and he genuinely just has all this stuff. That wasn't placed there as like the Xbox was in Phil Spencer.
Yeah.
Phil Spencer had the Xbox Series S on his bookshelf in the background. That was on purpose. The Indiana Jones stuff in Todd Howard's background wasn't on purpose. They were like, no, Todd Howard just loves Indiana Jones, and this is why he wants to make the game. Like, they're not actually connected. There wasn't a hint. We weren't trying to hint that we were going to announce this. He's just a huge fan. And so, what Todd wants, Bethesda does. Like, it's just the state of it at the moment.
Hey, I mean, it's worked for them. So
it really has. I mean, they wouldn't be here without him, to be honest.
Exactly. And
it was him that
God.
actually set up the purchase by ZeniMax, which was the only thing that stopped them going bankrupt.
And there we go. Right, so I think that pretty much wraps everything up. Lychee, is there anything in particular you wanted to talk about, discuss, or go over at all?
Nah, not really.
No, nothing at all.
I think Lychee just really wants you to know that a new pod racer game would be a great idea.
Yeah, it would.
Of course you'd say that, wouldn't you?
Leech, you may not be a Star Wars fan, but are you telling me you wouldn't love the idea of getting your racing rig out and pod racing? Like, I mean, come on. You telling me you wouldn't want to try that?
Do you know why I'm so reluctant for it?
Is it because it's working? It's working!
Yeah, pretty much. Everything bad about Star Wars, The Phantom Menace, revolves around the fact that some children actors cannot act. Now, this is pod racing! Shut up!
Yeah, but
it's a trigger for me. It's a massive trigger.
Okay. Hear me out. Here's a better idea then. If there's going to be a lot more Star Wars licenses going around, you're not a huge Total War fan, but you telling me you wouldn't want to give a Star Wars Total War game a go?
I would. No, I absolutely would.
That would be amazing. Imagine a Total War game based around the Clone Wars.
It would be amazing, and
it would be mind-bogglingly good.
It would. I mean, they could do it. I mean, they did it with the Warhammer 40k series. Let's get it going. Like, come on. I would be well up for that. I would love to see a Paradox Star Wars game. Give me a Paradox real-time strategy Star Wars game, and I will never ever play anything else for the rest of the year. In
2-3 years time, we need to keep an eagle eye open for hints at more Star Wars games from many other studios.
Yes.
Because I feel like we've had this Star Wars drought with EA, and I feel like we're about to hit an abundance of Star Wars games. They're going to be coming out of everywhere. We're going to have Star Wars out the wazoo.
Oh man, a Star Wars game from Paradox would actually just tick all of my boxes.
Oh dear Lord,
Famous
Elite Danger
Stellaris
Star
game.
Wars.
Oh,
Elite Danger
Oh.
Star Wars. I love it.
that would be an interesting one.
A Star Wars game that just comes out and just goes and just smacks Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen out the water. Could you imagine?
Do you know how long that would take to build though and make? That would be
Oh.
madness. Anyway, guys, we're gonna end it there because we will literally after this. I think we're just gonna talk about Star Wars games now for the next 30 minutes. So we will leave it there. Thank you all so much for joining us with the podcast. Like usual, it will be up on YouTube at some point within the next 24 hours, and then there are a couple of the podcasts missing from Spotify. I'll make sure that I get them all updated as well, including this one at some point tomorrow. So if you did miss any of it at any point, you can always go back and watch it on the YouTube channel, or you can always listen to it on Spotify when they're eventually released. Currently, you've got most of the other episodes up on there. So if you're interested in watching any of the other episodes, by all means, go and check it out. But for now, we're going to say goodbye. God bless. Thank you all for listening. And we will hopefully see you on the next one, which will be episode 20. So thanks, guys. Goodbye.
Toodles.
See ya.